The space station floated in the darkness between stars, massive and cold. Outpost Viridian was bigger than most cities, a metal giant built around something ancient and dangerous. Ships came and went every day, bringing scientists and tourists who wanted to see the prison from another time, but nobody wanted to see what lived deep inside. Captain Lisa Howard walked through the main corridor, her boots clicking on the metal floor. She had commanded the security division for 5 years now, and in that time she had seen plenty of strange things. But nothing was stranger than the creature locked in the heart of the station. The prison complex sat at the center of everything, protected by walls and energy fields that hummed with power. It was older than any living species in the galaxy, built by the Kethrans who had died out centuries ago. They had been masters of war and slavery, creating weapons out of living beings. When their empire fell, they left behind their prisons and their slaves, forgotten and locked away forever. Deep in the lowest level, past security checkpoints and warning signs, was the dungeon. And in that dungeon was Vrathkar. Lisa stopped at the observation deck and looked at the monitors. Cameras showed the inner chamber where the creature lived. He was huge, nearly 3 meters tall, covered in dark fur that was matted and dirty. His body was built like a wolf from Earth, but he walked on 2 legs like a man. His hands ended in claws that could tear through metal. His eyes glowed green in the darkness, and when he looked at the cameras, it felt like he was looking right through them. Vrathkar had been trapped in that cell for 1,100 years. Lisa could barely imagine what that meant. 11 centuries of being alone in the dark with nothing but rage to keep him company. A young officer named Connor Blake joined her at the window. He was new to the station, only 6 months on duty, and he still asked questions about everything. "Has anyone ever tried to talk to him?" Connor asked. Lisa shook her head. "Plenty have tried. None succeeded." She pulled up the records on her datapad and showed Connor the list. It was long. The Zelthani had sent their best telepaths, beings who could read minds across light years. They had tried to connect with Vrathkar's thoughts. 3 of them went insane. They spent months in hospitals screaming about the pain and anger they had found in his mind. The Orvani came next. They were peaceful creatures, bird-like and gentle, who believed all conflicts could be solved through talking. Their diplomats had approached the cell with gifts and kind words. Vrathkar had roared at them so loudly that the sound damaged their sensitive hearing. They fled and never returned. Even the Krogath warriors had failed. They were the strongest fighters in the known galaxy, feared on every world. They thought they could dominate Vrathkar through strength. But when their champion stood before the energy barrier, Vrathkar had stared at him with such pure hate that the warrior backed away. He told his people that the creature in the cell was not afraid of death. He welcomed it. There was no defeating something that had nothing left to lose. "So what do we do with him?" Connor asked. "We keep the power running to the containment fields," Lisa said. "We make sure he stays locked up. That's all we can do." The Galactic Council had declared the inner dungeon off limits 20 years ago. Most species were happy to forget about Vrathkar. As long as the energy barriers held, he was not their problem. Some scientists studied the prison itself, learning about Kethran technology, but nobody went near the creature anymore. Lisa turned away from the monitors. She had work to do, and staring at that cell always made her feel cold inside. She wondered sometimes what Vrathkar thought about, alone in the darkness. Did he remember his life before the Kethrans caught him? Did he know that his entire species was extinct, that he was the last of his kind? The record said he had been a prince once, a warrior who led his people in battle. The Lunari had been proud and fierce wolf-like beings who valued honor above everything. Then the Kethrans came. They captured Vrathkar and broke him, using machines and torture to turn him into a weapon. They put devices in his brain that made him angry all the time, that took away his control and left only rage. For decades, Vrathkar had fought in their arenas, killing for their entertainment. When the Kethran Empire collapsed, the prison station was abandoned. Everyone left. Everyone except the slaves who were locked in cells with no keys. 1,100 years was a long time to be angry. Later that day, a new ship docked at the station. Lisa watched it through the windows of the command center. It was a human vessel, small and fast, marked with the symbols of Earth's research division. Humans were still new to the galactic community. They had only joined 30 years ago, and most species were not sure what to make of them. Humans were strange. They were not as strong as the Krogath or as smart as the Zilthani. They could not fly like the Orvani or survive in space like the Crystalline. But they had something else, something that made other species nervous. Humans did not know when to quit. They took risks that seemed insane to everyone else. They cared about things they had no reason to care about. The airlock opened and a group of humans stepped onto the station. Lisa met them in the docking bay. There were 5 researchers, all wearing matching uniforms. Their leader was a man named Jake Morrison. He was young, maybe 30 years old, with short brown hair and eyes that looked at everything with interest. "Welcome to Outpost Viridian," Lisa said, shaking his hand. "Thank you, Captain," Jake replied. "We're excited to be here. Your station has some of the best preserved Kethrin artifacts in the galaxy." Lisa gave them the standard tour, showing them the research labs and the museum sections. Jake asked good questions, taking notes on his datapad. He seemed particularly interested in the prison complex. "Is it true you have an actual Kethrin slave here?" he asked, "a living one?" Lisa felt that cold feeling again. "Yes, but that section is closed to visitors." "I understand," Jake said. "But I'd like to see the records if that's allowed. I specialize in studying trauma and captivity. It's my research focus." Something in his voice made Lisa pause. Most people asked about Vrathkar out of curiosity, like he was an animal in a zoo. But Jake sounded different. He sounded like he actually cared. "I can arrange access to the historical files," Lisa said carefully, "but I have to warn you. What you'll read is not pleasant." "I didn't expect it would be," Jake said. That night, Jake sat in his quarters reading through the records. The more he read, the more troubled he became. Vrathkar was not a criminal. He had never chosen to hurt anyone. The Kethrins had stolen his life and his mind, turning him into something he never wanted to be. And now, centuries after his torturers were dead, he was still being punished. Jake looked at the images of Vrathkar on his screen. The creature looked terrifying, all fangs and claws and glowing eyes. But Jake had spent years studying beings who had suffered. He knew how to look past the surface. And when he looked at Vrathkar, he did not see a monster. He saw someone in pain. He made a decision then. It was probably stupid. It was definitely dangerous. But Jake had not traveled across the galaxy to play it safe. He opened a communication channel to Captain Howard. "Captain," he said when she answered, "I need to request permission for something unusual. I want to enter the dungeon. I want to try talking to Vrathkar." There was a long silence on the other end. When Lisa finally spoke, her voice was tight with disbelief. "You want to do what?" Lisa Howard stared at Jake Morrison like he had lost his mind. They sat in her office, a small room filled with screens and security monitors. On one of those screens, Vrathkar paced back and forth in his cell, a dark shadow moving in the darkness. "You cannot be serious," Lisa said. "I'm completely serious," Jake replied. He leaned forward in his chair, his hands folded on the desk between them. "Captain, I've read every report. I've studied every attempt to communicate with him. Everyone failed because they approached this wrong. They failed because he's dangerous," Lisa said. She pulled up a hologram showing medical reports. "Look at this. The Zilthani telepath who tried to read his mind. She spent 3 months in psychiatric care. She still has nightmares." Jake looked at the reports carefully. The Zilthani tried to force their way into his thoughts. They invaded his mind without permission. Of course he fought back. "And the Orvani?" Lisa asked. "They were peaceful. They came with respect and gifts. They came with their own philosophy," Jake said. "They tried to make him accept their way of thinking. They wanted him to be calm and reasonable like them. But he's not like them. He's been tortured for over 1,000 years. You cannot expect someone in that much pain to just accept peace because strangers tell him to." Lisa shook her head. "And the Krogath warriors? They're the strongest beings in the galaxy. They backed away from him. Because they tried to dominate him," Jake explained. "They came to prove they were stronger. But Vrathkar doesn't care about strength anymore. He's beyond that. The Kethrins already broke him with strength. Showing him more strength won't help." Connor Blake, who had been standing by the door, spoke up. "So what makes you think you can do better?" Jake turned to look at the young officer. "I don't think I can do better. I think I can do different." Every species that tried to reach Vrathkar wanted something from him. They wanted him to change, to fit into their idea of what he should be. I don't want anything from him. I just want to acknowledge that he's there. That's it?" Lisa asked. You just want to say hello to the most dangerous creature in known space? I want to treat him like a person, Jake said simply. Not a threat. Not a problem to solve. Just a person who's been hurt. Lisa stood up and walked to the window. Outside, stars stretched in every direction, cold and distant. Jake, I've seen your file. You're good at what you do. Your work on trauma victims has helped a lot of people, but this is different. Vrethkar isn't a victim you can counsel. He's been conditioned to be violent. The Kethrans put machines in his brain. They made him into a weapon. I know, Jake said, but weapons can be unmade. People can heal, not after 1100 years. Maybe not completely, Jake admitted, but even a little bit would be something. Right now he has nothing. No hope, no future, just rage and darkness. Don't you think he deserves better than that? Before Lisa could answer, her communicator beeped. She looked at the screen and frowned. The station's chief medical officer wants to speak with us. She heard about your request. A few minutes later, Dr. Karen Phillips entered the office. She was older than Lisa, with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. She carried a data pad filled with charts and brain scans. This is a terrible idea, she said without introduction. She threw the data pad on Lisa's desk. Look at these scans. This is what happened to people who got too close to Vrethkar. The Zelthani's brain activity was damaged. The Tarvian scientists developed severe anxiety just from standing near the outer barrier. Even people who only watched him on monitors reported feeling uneasy. Jake picked up the data pad and studied the information. These people were all telepathic or empathic species. They could feel his emotions. Humans aren't telepathic. That doesn't make you immune, Dr. Phillips said. The Kethrans designed their weapons to affect anyone. Vrethkar projects fear and aggression. It's in his conditioning. You'll feel it too. Maybe, Jake said, but I'm prepared for it. I've worked with violent patients before. I know what trauma looks like. This isn't a hospital on Earth, Dr. Phillips said, her voice sharp. This is an ancient war machine in the shape of a living being. The Kethrans did not make him to be fixed. They made him to kill. Jake set down the data pad and looked at both women. The Kethrans are dead. Their empire is gone, but Vrethkar is still alive. He's still conscious. He still thinks and feels. Doesn't that matter? Of course it matters, Lisa said quietly. But what matters more is keeping people safe. If I let you go down there and something happens, it's on me. I'll sign any waiver you want, Jake said. I'll take full responsibility. If something goes wrong, it's my choice. Dr. Phillips crossed her arms. And what exactly do you plan to do? Just walk up to his cell and start talking? That's exactly what I plan to do, Jake said. In what language? Dr. Phillips asked. He speaks ancient Lunari. Nobody knows that language. It died with his species. I'll speak English, Jake said. He won't understand the words, but he'll understand the tone. Communication is more than just words. Lisa sat down again, rubbing her temples. She had a headache growing behind her eyes. Jake, I want you to understand something. If I approve this, it will only be under very strict conditions. You'll wear a neural dampener to protect your brain. You'll stay in the outer chamber only, behind the second barrier. And at the first sign of trouble, we extract you immediately. I can agree to those terms, Jake said. I'm not finished, Lisa continued. You get one attempt, just one. If it doesn't work, if he reacts with violence, the dungeon goes back to being off limits. No second chances, Jake nodded. One attempt. I understand, Dr. Phillips shook her head. This is insane. The Galactic Council won't allow it. The Council doesn't need to know, Lisa said. Not yet. We'll classify it as a research observation. If something goes wrong, I'll take the blame. But if there's even a small chance Jake is right, then we have to try. Why? Dr. Phillips demanded. Why take this risk? Lisa looked at the monitor showing Vrethkar's cell. The creature had stopped pacing and was sitting in the corner, his glowing eyes staring at nothing. Because I've been watching him for 5 years, she said softly. And I'm tired of seeing a living being treated like a piece of furniture. If Jake fails, nothing changes. But if he succeeds, maybe we can give that creature something he hasn't had in centuries, a reason to keep living. Dr. Phillips was quiet for a moment. Then she sighed. Fine, but I'm monitoring his vital signs the entire time. And I'm preparing sedatives and neural suppressors just in case. Agreed, Lisa said. She turned to Connor. Blake, you're in charge of security. Watch the feeds. If Vrethkar shows any sign of attacking, you hit the extraction button. Don't wait for my order. Just do it. Connor nodded, looking nervous. Yes, ma'am. Jake stood up. When can we do this? Tomorrow morning, Lisa said. That gives us time to prepare the equipment and brief the security team. And it gives you time to think about whether you really want to do this. I've already thought about it, Jake said. That night, Jake could not sleep. He lay in his quarters, staring at the ceiling. His mind kept going back to the images he had seen of Hrathkar. The creature looked terrifying, true, but Jake had learned long ago that the scariest-looking people were often the most broken inside. He thought about Earth's history. Humans had done terrible things to each other. Slavery, torture, war. For thousands of years, people had hurt each other in ways that seemed unforgivable, but humans had also learned to heal. They had learned that even the most damaged person could find peace given time and compassion. Maybe other species had never learned that lesson. Maybe they had never needed to. Most alien races in the galaxy were more advanced than humans, more civilized. They had not spent millennia fighting and hurting each other. They did not understand how much pain a person could carry and still survive. But Jake understood, and he thought maybe that was why he had to try, not because he was braver than the Ziltani, or smarter than the Orvani, but because he knew what it was like to look at someone broken and still see a person worth saving. He finally fell asleep just before dawn, dreaming of green eyes in the darkness. The morning came too quickly. Jake stood in the equipment room, putting on the gear that was supposed to keep him safe. The neural dampener fit around his head like a crown, small lights blinking along its edges. Dr. Phillips adjusted the settings, her face tight with worry. This will protect you from direct psionic attacks, she said, but it won't stop you from feeling afraid. That's a natural response, not something the machine can block. I understand, Jake said. Lisa Howard entered the room with Connor Blake behind her. She carried a small device that looked like a watch. This is the emergency extraction trigger, she explained, strapping it to Jake's wrist. If you press this button, or if we press it from our end, you'll be pulled out immediately. The magnetic system in your boots will activate and drag you back to the entrance. It will hurt, but it will save your life. Jake looked at the device and nodded. Let's hope we don't need it. Let's hope, Lisa agreed, but she did not sound confident. They walked through the station together, moving deeper into the prison complex. Other officers stopped what they were doing to watch them pass. Word had spread about the human who wanted to visit the savage wolf. Some looked at Jake with respect. Others looked at him like he was an idiot. The corridors grew darker as they descended. The walls here were ancient, made of materials that humans had no name for. Kethran symbols covered every surface, warnings in a dead language. Jake felt the weight of history pressing down on him. This place had been built for suffering. They reached the final checkpoint. Beyond this point, only Jake would go. Lisa and Connor would watch from the security station, monitoring cameras and vital signs. Dr. Phillips would stay in the medical bay, ready to respond if something went wrong. Last chance to change your mind, Lisa said. Jake smiled, though he did not feel like smiling. I'll be fine. Famous last words, Connor muttered. Jake stepped through the checkpoint. The door sealed behind him with a heavy sound that made his heart beat faster. He was alone now, standing in a corridor that led down into darkness. His footsteps echoed as he walked, each step taking him closer to the creature that had terrified an entire galaxy. The outer chamber was exactly as he had seen in the recordings. It was a circular room carved from black stone. One wall was made entirely of energy barriers that glowed faint blue in the darkness. Beyond those barriers was another chamber, the inner cell where Hrathkar lived. Jake could not see the creature at first. The inner chamber was too dark, but he could hear breathing, deep and slow. Something massive was in there watching him. He walked to the center of the outer chamber and sat down on the floor, his legs crossed, his hands resting on his knees. He tried to keep his breathing steady even though his heart was pounding. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then something moved in the darkness beyond the barrier. Hrathkar stepped into the light. Jake's first thought was that the creature was bigger than he had imagined. 3 meters tall, maybe more. His body was covered in dark fur that was matted and scarred. His arms were long and powerful, ending in hands with claws like knives. His legs were bent backward like a wolf's, built for running and jumping. But it was his face that made Jake's breath catch. Hrathkar's head was wolf-like, with a long snout filled with teeth. But his eyes were forward-facing, intelligent and aware. They glowed green in the darkness, and when they focused on Jake, it felt like being seen by something ancient and terrible. The creature moved closer to the barrier, his movements slow and deliberate. He was studying Jake, trying to understand what this small human was doing in his prison. Then Vrathkar lunged. He hit the energy barrier with massive force, his claws scraping against the invisible wall. The impact made the entire room shake. He roared, and the sound was so loud that Jake felt it in his bones. It was not just noise. It was rage given voice, centuries of pain and hate compressed into one terrible scream. Jake's body wanted to run. Every instinct told him to get up and flee. The neural dampener protected his mind, but it could not stop his fear. His hands shook. His mouth went dry. He could smell something in the air, a sharp scent like burning metal. It was Vrathkar's natural smell mixed with anger. But Jake did not run. He stayed sitting, his legs crossed, his eyes on the creature. He let Vrathkar see that he was afraid but would not leave. Vrathkar hit the barrier again, harder this time. Then again. He was trying to break through, trying to reach the human who dared to enter his prison. His claws left marks in the air where they scraped against the energy field. In the security station, Connor's hand hovered over the extraction button. "Captain, should I pull him out?" Lisa watched the screens, her jaw tight. "Not yet. Look at Jake, he's not in immediate danger." Dr. Phillips checked the medical readings. "His heart rate is elevated, but not dangerously so. The neural dampener is working. He's scared but stable." "I still think we should pull him out," Connor said. "Wait," Lisa ordered. In the chamber, Vrathkar stopped his attack. He backed away from the barrier, breathing hard. His green eyes never left Jake's face. The human was still sitting there, unchanged. He had not run. He had not tried to fight back. He just sat there, meeting Vrathkar's gaze with something the creature did not understand. Jake spoke for the first time. His voice was quiet but steady. "I know you're angry," he said in English. "I know you've been hurt. I'm not here to hurt you more." Vrathkar tilted his head, confused. The human's mouth was making sounds, but they were not in any language he knew. Yet there was something in the tone, something that did not match the fear smell coming from the human. Jake continued talking. He did not know if Vrathkar understood anything he said. It did not matter. He needed to speak, needed to fill the silence with something other than rage. "You were a prince once. I read about it in the records. Your people called you Vrathkar the Brave. You led them in battle. You protected them." Vrathkar's ears moved, catching the sounds. The human kept making those strange noises. "Then the Kethrans came," Jake said. His voice was sad now. "They took you. They broke you. They turned you into something you never wanted to be. And when they were done with you, they locked you away and forgot about you." The creature sat down on his haunches, still watching. His tail, which had been lashing back and forth in anger, began to slow. "On my planet, we did terrible things too." Jake continued. "Humans hurt each other for thousands of years. We had slavery. We had torture. We thought some people were less than others, and we treated them like animals. It took us a long time to learn that was wrong." He shifted slightly, trying to get more comfortable on the hard floor. "We learned something important, though. We learned that people can heal. Even when they've been broken so badly that it seems impossible, they can still find peace. It takes time. It takes patience. But it's possible." Vrathkar was sitting now, his massive form hunched forward. His eyes had not stopped glowing, but the hate in them seemed less sharp. He looked confused more than angry. "I can't undo what happened to you," Jake said. "Nobody can. The Kethrans are dead. Your people are gone. You're the last of your kind, and that's not fair. None of this is fair." Jake took a deep breath. "But you're still alive. You're still here, and as long as you're alive, there's a chance for something better than this. You don't have to spend the rest of your existence being angry. You don't have to die in this cell alone and hating everything." The creature made a sound, low and rumbling. It was not quite a growl, but it was not friendly either. It sounded like he was trying to process what was happening. Jake smiled slightly. "I'm going to come back tomorrow," he said. "And the day after that. I'm going to sit here and talk to you. You don't have to listen. You don't have to care. But I'm going to keep coming back because I think you deserve to have someone who sees you as more than just a monster." In the security station, Lisa watched the scene with amazement. He's sitting there talking to it like it's a person. "It is a person," Connor said quietly. "At least it used to be." "Look at Vrathkar's body language," Dr. Phillips said, pointing at the screens. "His aggression markers are dropping. He's not attacking anymore. He's listening, Jake stood up slowly, careful not to make any sudden movements. I'm going to leave now, he said to Vrathkar. But I'll be back. I promise. He walked backward toward the exit, keeping his eyes on the creature. Vrathkar watched him go, not moving from his sitting position. When Jake reached the door, he paused. You're not alone anymore, Jake said. Remember that. Then he left the chamber. The door sealed behind him, and Jake leaned against the wall, his legs suddenly weak. His whole body was shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. He had been more scared than he wanted to admit. Lisa and Connor came running down the corridor. Are you okay? Lisa asked. I'm fine, Jake said, though his voice shook a little. Did you see? He stopped attacking. He sat down. He listened. He didn't understand a word you said, Connor pointed out. He didn't need to understand the words, Jake replied. He understood that I wasn't there to hurt him. That's enough for now. Dr. Phillips arrived with a medical scanner checking Jake's vital signs. You're lucky, she said. Your neural activity shows stress but no damage. How do you feel? Tired, Jake admitted. And scared, but also hopeful. Lisa looked at him with new respect. You actually did it. You stood in... Jake returned to the dungeon the next day, and the day after that, and the day after that. Each visit followed the same pattern. He would sit on the floor of the outer chamber and talk while Vrathkar watched from behind the energy barrier. At first, the creature remained aggressive. He would pace back and forth, growling and showing his teeth. Sometimes he would hit the barrier with his claws, testing its strength. But he never attacked as violently as he had on the first day. Something had shifted. By the end of the first week, Vrathkar stopped pacing. He would sit when Jake sat, watching with those glowing green eyes. He still did not understand the human's words, but he listened to the sounds. The tone was never threatening. It was calm, patient, sometimes sad but never cruel. Jake brought small objects with him, a piece of cloth, a smooth stone, a data pad that played music from Earth. He would place these items near the barrier where Vrathkar could see them, though the energy field prevented any physical exchange. The creature seemed fascinated by these gifts, especially the music. His ears would perk up, turning to catch every note. Dr. Phillips monitored Jake's condition after every visit. She expected to see signs of stress or psychological damage, but Jake remained healthy. If anything, he seemed energized by the experience. This shouldn't be working, she told Lisa one afternoon. They were reviewing the medical scans in her office. Every other species that tried to connect with Vrathkar suffered mental trauma. But Jake is fine. Maybe it's because he's not trying to connect telepathically, Lisa suggested. He's just being present. It's more than that, Dr. Phillips said, pulling up comparative brain scans. Look at this. These are scans of Vrathkar from 6 months ago. Now look at these from yesterday. The neural implants the Kethrans installed, they're deteriorating. Lisa leaned closer to the screen. How is that possible? I don't know, Dr. Phillips admitted. The implants were designed to be permanent. They amplify aggression and suppress higher reasoning, but they seem to be breaking down. I think it's because they were programmed to respond to certain stimuli, fear and violence. Jake isn't giving Vrathkar either of those things. The implants don't know how to handle compassion. Lisa sat back in her chair thinking. So what you're saying is that Jake is accidentally rewiring an ancient war machine's brain by being nice to it. That's exactly what I'm saying, Dr. Phillips replied. And if the implants continue to deteriorate, Vrathkar might start to regain some of his original personality. The person he was before the Kethrans broke him. Is that safe? Lisa asked. Dr. Phillips shrugged. I have no idea. We're in completely unknown territory here. On day 15, something remarkable happened. Jake was sitting in his usual spot talking about Earth's oceans. He had been describing whales and dolphins, creatures that humans had once hunted but now protected. He was explaining how humans had learned to feel guilty about the harm they had caused. Vrathkar was sitting closer to the barrier than usual, his head tilted in that way that meant he was paying attention. Then, without warning, he spoke. The sound was rough and harsh, like metal scraping on stone. The words were in a language Jake did not recognize, but they were clearly words, not just growls or roars. Vrathkar had said something. Jake's heart leaped. He spoke carefully, keeping his voice calm even though he was excited. I don't understand your language, but I heard you. You spoke. Can you do it again? Vrathkar's glowing eyes narrowed. He made the sound again, louder this time. It was one word, repeated. A question maybe, or a demand. Connor, Jake said, knowing the officer was listening on the security feeds. "Are you recording this?" Connor's voice came through the communication system. "Already on it. Sending the audio to the linguistics department now." Jake pulled out his datapad and played back the sound Vrathkar had made. The creature's ears perked up when he heard his own voice. Jake pointed to himself. "Jake," he said clearly. Then he pointed to Vrathkar and played the recording again. The creature understood. He pointed at Jake with one clawed finger, then at himself. He made different sounds, a string of words in ancient Lunari. Within an hour, the station's linguistic AI had processed the sounds. The translation came through to Jake's datapad. Vrathkar had said one word over and over. "Why?" Jake read the translation and felt his throat tighten. He looked up at the massive creature sitting behind the barrier. "You want to know why I keep coming back?" Vrathkar's eyes were fixed on him, waiting. Jake thought about how to answer. He could not speak Lunari, and Vrathkar could not understand English. But he had to try. He pointed to himself and made a gesture to his heart. Then he pointed to Vrathkar and made the same gesture. He hoped the meaning was clear. "You have a heart. I have a heart. We are the same." The creature made a sound that might have been surprise. He stood up and walked to the barrier, pressing one massive hand against it. Up close, Jake could see how damaged Vrathkar was. His fur was scarred. His eyes were tired. This was someone who had suffered more than anyone should have to suffer. Jake stood too, walking to the barrier. He pressed his hand against it, matching where Vrathkar's hand was on the other side. The energy field hummed between them, a wall that neither could cross. "I keep coming back because you deserve better than this," Jake said, even though he knew the words would not be understood. "You deserve to be more than just the thing the Kethrans made you into." Vrathkar spoke again, more words in ancient Lunari. The linguistic AI translated slowly. "Monster weapon dead inside." Jake shook his head firmly. "No, you're not a monster. You're a person who was hurt. There's a difference." More translation came through. "Everyone runs. Everyone fears. I'm not running," Jake said. "I'm right here." For the first time since Jake had started visiting, Vrathkar's expression changed. The hate in his eyes softened. Not much, just a little. But it was there. The creature was starting to hope, and hope was dangerous when you had been without it for so long. The next day, news reached the station that sent everyone into crisis mode. A Galactic Council inspection team was coming to Outpost Viridian. They had heard rumors about unauthorized contact with the prisoner, and were coming to investigate. Lisa called an emergency meeting with Jake, Dr. Phillips, and Connor. They gathered in her office, all of them looking worried. "The council is sending Shale Knox," Lisa said. "That's bad. He's one of their strictest representatives. If he decides we violated containment protocols, he can shut down this entire station." "What do we tell him?" Connor asked. "The truth," Jake said. "We tell him that I've been visiting Vrathkar and that it's working. The creature is communicating. He's showing signs of higher reasoning. This is a breakthrough. The council won't see it that way," Dr. Phillips said. "They'll see a human taking unnecessary risks with a quarantined threat. They might even charge you with violations of the Prime Conservation Act." Jake frowned. "What's that?" "It's a law that prevents people from interfering with dangerous contained entities," Lisa explained. "The idea is to protect both the entity and the people around it. But the law is vague. It could be interpreted to mean that what you're doing is illegal." "That's ridiculous," Jake said. "I'm not interfering. I'm helping." "You're changing his behavior," Dr. Phillips pointed out. "That's interference by definition." Jake stood up and walked to the window. Outside, ships moved through space, going about their normal business. Everything looked calm, but he knew that could change quickly. "I need to see Vrathkar before the council arrives," he said. "I need to explain what's happening." "He won't understand," Connor said. "He'll understand enough," Jake replied. Lisa made a decision. "You have 2 hours. After that, the council ships arrive and we go into lockdown. Whatever you're going to do, do it now." Jake ran through the corridors, moving faster than he ever had before. He reached the dungeon and went straight to the outer chamber. Vrathkar was waiting, as if he had sensed something was wrong. Jake sat down quickly. "We don't have much time," he said. "The Galactic Council is coming. They might make me stop visiting you. They might seal this place up forever." Vrathkar moved to the barrier, his body tense. He spoke in Lunari, and the translation came through quickly. "You leave? Like others?" "I don't want to leave. Jake said. But they might make me. The other species in the galaxy. They don't understand what we're doing here. They think it's too dangerous. Vrathkar's claws scraped against the barrier. Dangerous, yes, I am dangerous. No, Jake said firmly. You were made dangerous. That's not the same thing. The Kethrans did this to you. It wasn't your choice. The creature was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke again. His voice different. Softer. Tired, so tired of being angry. Jake felt tears in his eyes. I know, I'm sorry. I'm sorry this happened to you. You come back? Vrathkar asked. If they allow. I'll come back, Jake promised. I don't care what the council says. I'll find a way. Vrathkar pressed both hands against the barrier now. Jake, friend. It was the first time the creature had used Jake's name. The first time he had called anyone a friend in 1100 years. Yes, Jake said, pressing his hands against the barrier to match. Friends. Above them, the council ships were docking. The inspection was about to begin. Everything Jake had worked for was at risk. But in that moment, though, none of it mattered. He had reached Vrathkar. He had proven that even after centuries of torture and isolation, connection was still possible. Now he just had to convince Shale-Nox was not what Jake expected. The council representative was a being made entirely of living crystal, his body reflecting light in rainbow patterns. He moved with slow precision, each step deliberate. His voice when he spoke sounded like wind chimes. I have reviewed the reports, Shale-Nox said. They were gathered in the station's main conference room. Lisa, Jake, Dr. Phillips, and Connor sat on one side of the table. Shale-Nox stood on the other, flanked by 2 security officers from his ship. This human has violated multiple safety protocols. He has approached a Class 5 threat without proper authorization. I had authorization, Jake said. Captain Howard approved my visits. Captain Howard exceeded her authority, Shale-Nox replied. His crystalline face was impossible to read. The Galactic Council declared that section of the station off-limits 20 years ago. Only Council-approved personnel may enter, Lisa spoke up. With respect, the Human Council agreements give humans the right to take calculated risks. Jake signed all the proper waivers. The waivers protect him from legal responsibility if he is harmed, Shale-Nox said. They do not protect him from charges of interfering with a quarantined entity. Dr. Phillips pushed forward her data pad. Before you make any final decisions, you should look at these medical scans. Vrathkar's neural implants are deteriorating. He's showing signs of recovering his original personality. This is a major scientific discovery. Shale-Nox examined the scans with his strange, multifaceted eyes. These implants were designed by the Kethrans to be permanent. How is this possible? We believe it's because of Jake's approach, Dr. Phillips explained. The implants were programmed to respond to fear and violence. Jake gave Vrathkar neither. The implants couldn't handle sustained compassion. They're breaking down. Fascinating, Shale-Nox said. But his tone did not sound fascinated. It sounded concerned, which makes this situation even more dangerous. If the implants fail completely, we have no idea how Vrathkar will behave. He'll behave like a person, Jake said. Like the warrior prince he was before the Kethrans captured him. You cannot know that, Shale-Nox countered. 1100 years is a long time. Even if his implants fail, the trauma remains. He could be unstable, violent, a threat to everyone on this station. Jake leaned forward. He's already not violent. Not with me. He called me his friend. He's learning to communicate again. These are not the actions of someone who wants to hurt people. One person, Shale-Nox corrected. He tolerates one person. That does not make him safe. The debate continued for hours. Shale-Nox brought up every regulation, every safety concern, every reason why Jake should be ordered to stop visiting Vrathkar. Jake argued back with evidence and emotion, showing recordings of his visits, translations of their conversations, proof that real progress was being made. Finally, Lisa made a bold move. What if we propose a test, she said. A way to prove whether Vrathkar is capable of choosing peace over violence? Shale-Nox turned his crystalline attention to her. What kind of test? We lower the barriers, Lisa said. The room went silent. Even Jake looked shocked. We give Vrathkar the choice to leave his cell. If he attacks, we activate the emergency containment and accept that he's too dangerous to ever be free. But if he chooses peace, the council has to consider relocating him to a better facility. You want to release a Class 5 threat into your station? Shale Knox asked, his voice rising in pitch like shattering glass. Not into the station, Lisa clarified. Just into the outer chamber, where Jake will be waiting. If Rathkar trusts anyone, it's Jake. If he can control himself in that situation, it proves he's capable of rehabilitation. Dr. Phillips looked horrified. Lisa, that's insane. If something goes wrong, Jake could die. I'll do it, Jake said immediately. If it means giving Vrathkar a real chance at freedom, I'll do it. Shale Knox was quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke. This goes against every safety protocol. The Council will be furious if I allow this. But you're allowed to make decisions in the field, Connor pointed out. He had been quiet through most of the meeting, but now he spoke up. You're the Council's representative. If you approve the test, they have to accept your judgment. More silence. Jake could hear his own heartbeat in his ears. Everything depended on what Shale Knox decided next. One test, the Council representative finally said, under strict conditions. The station will be evacuated except for essential security personnel. Dr. Phillips will have sedatives ready. At the first sign of aggression, we activate every containment system simultaneously. And if Rathkar fails this test, he stays locked in that cell forever. No more attempts. No more visits. Do you understand? I understand, Jake said. Then we proceed, Shale Knox said. May your human luck hold. The evacuation took 6 hours. Hundreds of people, scientists and tourists and workers, were loaded onto ships and sent to other stations. Only the security team remained, positioned at strategic points throughout the complex. Dr. Phillips set up a medical station just outside the dungeon entrance. Shale Knox and his officers took position in the observation room. Jake stood alone in the corridor outside the outer chamber. Lisa came to see him before the test began. You don't have to do this, she said quietly. Yes, I do, Jake replied. Vrathkar has been locked up for 1100 years. He deserves a chance to prove he's more than what the Kethrans made him. What if you're wrong? Lisa asked. What if the moment those barriers come down, he attacks? Then I'm wrong, Jake said. But I don't think I am. I've looked into his eyes, Lisa. I've seen the person underneath all that rage. He's tired of being angry. He wants something different. Lisa put a hand on his shoulder. You're either the bravest person I've ever met or the craziest. Jake smiled. Maybe both. He entered the outer chamber. Vrathkar was already at the barrier, waiting. The creature looked different somehow. More alert. More present. Jake sat down in his usual spot. They're going to lower the barriers, he said. The linguistic AI translated his words into Lunari, broadcasting them through speakers. You'll be able to leave your cell. You'll be free to move. But Vrathkar, you have to choose peace. If you attack, if you hurt anyone, they'll lock you up forever. This is your only chance. Vrathkar's response came through the translation system. Afraid. So long since I could move freely. I'm afraid too, Jake admitted. But I believe in you. You're not just a weapon. You're Vrathkar the Brave. Remember who you were. In the control room, Lisa's hand hovered over the activation button. Everyone ready? She asked. Around the complex, security officers confirmed their positions. Dr. Phillips checked her medical equipment one last time. Shale Knox watched the monitors silently, his crystalline body reflecting the light from dozens of screens. Lowering barriers in 3, 2, 1, Lisa said. The energy field shut down. For the first time in 1100 years, nothing stood between Vrathkar and the outside world. The humming sound that had filled the chamber for centuries went silent. Vrathkar stood slowly. He was even bigger without the barrier to separate them. A massive figure of fur and muscle and claws. He took one step forward, then another. He was out of his cell, standing in the outer chamber. Jake remained sitting, his heart pounding, but his expression calm. Hello, friend, he said quietly. Vrathkar walked toward him. Each step seemed to take forever. The creature's claws clicked on the stone floor. His green eyes glowed in the dimness. He was close now, close enough to reach out and touch Jake. In the control room, Connor's hand was on the emergency button. Captain, should I activate containment? Lisa watched the screen. Wait. Vrathkar stopped directly in front of Jake. The human was so small compared to the Lunari warrior. One swipe of those claws could end everything. For a moment, Vrathkar just stood there looking down at the person who had given him hope. Then slowly, carefully, Vrathkar knelt. He lowered himself to Jake's level, his movements gentle despite his size. He reached out one massive hand and placed it on Jake's shoulder. Not grabbing. Not threatening. Just touching, making real contact for the first time. "Friend," Vrathkar said in heavily accented English. He had learned the word. "Friend Jake." Jake felt tears running down his face. He reached up and placed his hand over Vrathkar's. "Friend Vrathkar," he said. In the control room, nobody spoke. They were all watching something that should have been impossible. A creature designed for violence choosing peace. A prisoner given freedom choosing to be gentle. Shale Knox's voice finally broke the silence. Remarkable. Truly remarkable. The test was over. Vrathkar had passed. He had been given the opportunity to attack and had chosen connection instead. The Galactic Council, watching the footage from their chambers across the galaxy, voted to authorize Vrathkar's relocation. Earth's government offered to sponsor his recovery, proud that one of their citizens had achieved this breakthrough. Plans were made to build a rehabilitation facility on a human colony world, a place with open sky and forests where Vrathkar could begin to heal. Weeks later, Jake stood in that new facility with Vrathkar. The compound was large with trees and grass and a small lake. It looked nothing like the cell that had been.